guys, welcome to another episode of Smash JT. What if the next Metroid Prime 4, is a launch title for the unannounced Nintendo Switch VR platform? I mean, it does sound a little bit crazy, but if you dig a little bit deeper on how Nintendo's handled the Metroid series in the past, it's really not that far-fetched. Alright, to get things started here, this idea first came to me when I was watching Rob do his Rule of Two review. Friend of the channel, great dude, and great content. If you're not familiar with him, definitely check him out. Going over all the Metroid games ever created and lining them up in his order from least favorite to best. And while he was talking about that, he said something about Metroid Prime 4 and how it's coming out for the Switch, and that's pretty much all we know about it. And when I heard him say that, I was like, but what have they really told us about it? There's no trailer, there's no pictures, there's really nothing that they've said about this title, except for a picture of the title of it saying now in development for the Nintendo Switch. And I don't know if that was said to throw people off, or if I'm just crazy with this theory, but stay with me here, because as far as the Metroid series goes, if you look back in the roots of it and how it began, they've been taking chances with this series all the way from the start. Putting a female as the lead character, this is something that was unheard of back in the day. As the Metroid series has progressed, we've seen it go from pinball all the way to Federation Force, with Metroid Other M squeezed in between. Very different experiences all the way through. And then you get to the Metroid Prime series, and you see it switch to first-person perspective. Something that I would have never thought I would have enjoyed out of a Metroid game. But Retro Studios, when they took over Metroid and made the original Metroid Prime, they made the first-person look work. When I asked on Twitter the other day if people thought this would be a good idea, if they'd be on board with it or not, the vast majority of you guys were saying, hell no, I don't want a Metroid Prime game to be VR. But then I look back at other things in Twitter, things like the original Super Mario 64, and if I were to have asked people if they wanted to see Mario in 3D back in the day, I would have bet that most people would have said no, they don't want Mario in 3D. Mario belongs in 2D, but yet Nintendo made Mario work in that. And the same goes, like I said, for when Retro was able to convert Metroid from being a 2D perspective to a first-person perspective. And they've done everything in between with the series. So progressing it to a VR title with those things in mind isn't as crazy as you might first think, especially when you consider the PSVR is struggling a little bit right now. I love my PSVR. I think it's a great system, but I just don't play it as much as I'd like to because there's no killer app for it. There's no one singular title that I just have to get for my PSVR and be stuck playing it because I just can't stop. And I feel like Nintendo might have learned a lesson watching Sony launch the PSVR and say, we need an absolutely killer app to make our VR system take off. We've heard Nintendo talk about VR. We've heard Reggie Fils-Aimé talk about it, saying how they're interested in it, but not until it gets to a point where it's more feasible and more fun. And yes, I'm paraphrasing, but the point is, Nintendo is interested in VR, just not right at this moment. But who said they wouldn't be interested 6 months from now, 12 months from now, a year and a half, 2 years from now? They still haven't given us any information about Metroid Prime 4. So as far as I'm concerned, it's still completely feasible for it to be a VR title. And this is why I want to throw it out to you guys as a question. What if Metroid Prime 4 is a launch title for the yet-to-be-announced Nintendo Switch VR platform? And with that being said, yes, it will still work on the Nintendo Switch, obviously, because they're going to have a ton of people that will want to play it on their Switch. But don't you think the Metroid Prime first-person perspective, being in Samus's mind where you put the helmet on, you see the heads-up display in front of you, playing the Metroid Prime series has always felt like you were Samus. Putting on a VR apparatus would make you feel even more in touch with playing the role of the lead protagonist for an incredible series. It's something that was missing from every other VR platform out there. Making a launch title to make it absolutely take off. I'll be honest with you guys, I really wouldn't be so hard pressed to think that this is actually gonna be a reality if Nintendo provided a few more details over E3 with where Metroid Prime 4 was at, seeing as their initial announcement for Metroid Prime 4 was over a year ago, and then no update at E3 2018 got me thinking, wait a second, they're not even going to show a trailer for where it's at? They're not even going to show a still image? They're not going to show anything about Metroid Prime 4 after a year of development has progressed and still nothing? That doesn't necessarily mean it's definitely going to be something crazy like VR, but it does let you know that they're holding something back on this title right now. Nintendo's never been one to be afraid to take chances. I mean, just look at the Virtual Boy, look at the Game & Watch, or the DS, or the 3DS. All these ventures that Nintendo has jumped into, some have been successful, some haven't been, but it's never stopped Nintendo from innovating. It's never stopped Nintendo from saying, we can't move forward with doing something crazy because something else crazy didn't work. Remember the analog stick on the N64 controller, or the Rumble Pack attachment? Or even things that never saw the light of day, like the Wii Vitality sensor. That never came out, although I do feel like it will eventually find its way coming out in a form of a device in the future. I wouldn't say that's dead and gone, but it does show Nintendo's very innovative, but it doesn't necessarily always mean what they're innovative with is gonna work, but it also doesn't say they're stopping their innovation. I mean, look at the Nintendo Switch. That thing is one of the most innovative consoles of our lifetimes, and in many ways, it's revolutionized the entire video game industry. I almost feel like when Nintendo finally jumps into the virtual reality space, it's going to be a culmination of all these things coming together and not just be a simplistic headset you put on. I have a feeling it's going to have some sort of rumble effect to it. It's going to have the vitality sensor ingrained with it. They're going to have so many things coming together and making the VR experience unique that it would only make sense to make it perfect and have an incredible game experience to go along hand in hand with it. Like Super Mario Bros. On the NES, or Tetris packed in with the Game Boy, or even Wii Sports with the Wii. Metroid launching with the Nintendo VR system would only make sense. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I am saying if Nintendo is going to be making a VR platform, which they've hinted at plenty of times in the past, kicking it off with a known brand, something that would lend itself perfectly to the VR world, would just make sense. And if they don't make Metroid Prime 4 for a VR system, then I'm starting to wonder if Nintendo even cares about VR in this generation of consoles. Because if Metroid Prime 4 is not VR, and Nintendo doesn't announce a console coming out that's going to attach to the Nintendo Switch, then to me that pretty much solidifies that Nintendo does not care about VR in this console generation. And to be quite honest, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because VR does have a ways to go before it completely envelops you in the environment. At least, that's my feelings on it. But I want to throw the question out to you guys. Do you feel like Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a VR launch title for the yet-to-be-announced Nintendo Switch VR platform? Or do you think this is just a crazy idea that no way, no how is going to happen? I'd be interested to hear. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching and have a good one. As always, the Smash JT channel is brought to us by you generous Patreons out there. If you're interested in joining them, hit the Patreon link below. You can donate as little as $1 a month. Everything makes a gigantic difference. If you enjoy the content I'm making here, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and hit the bell for notifications. And again, thank you so much for watching.